Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the From Adversity to Abundance podcast. I am your host, Jamie Bateman, and I'm thrilled today to have with us Justin Bogard. Justin, how are you doing?
I'm doing awesome, Jamie. Thanks for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Justin, you are one of the founders of American Note Buyers, among other things. I know you and I have gotten to know each other a little bit better over the last couple of years, and I'm really excited to dive in here. For the audience out there, for the listener, who are you and why should we listen to you?
Right. So my name is Justin Bogard, as Jamie pointed out. I am a real estate note investor. I co-founded American Note Buyers with my business partner, Richard Thornton. And so I run the operations of the business and we manage a real estate fund.
Awesome. That's cool. So now just obviously you and I are somewhat in the same space, but basically in
Yeah.
the same professional space. We have a little bit of a different approach to our how we run our
Yeah.
businesses. But for the listener out there who's unfamiliar with, mortgage notes are, how that works, what do you, what is it that your business actually does in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, so we specialize in what we call mom and pop seller finance notes. We purchase them for the purpose of buying the performing cash flow, and then we end up reselling those notes in volume later after we hold them for a year or two, and that's the purpose for our fund right now.
Awesome. Perfect. I know we're going to come back to that in a little bit and dive into your business and the different types of people you work with and who you serve and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Let's jump into your backstory, Justin. I know you've been through some hard times, and obviously this show is called From Adversity to Abundance. And like we briefly mentioned before we hit record, everyone's story is different, and everyone's version of adversity, everyone's picture of abundance is different. But that's what makes your story unique, and that's why we want to hear about it. So, where do you want to start off?
Oh, we can start wherever. I like to uh, when people work with me, with investors that want to invest in our fund, or clients that want to purchase notes from us and kind of continue a long-term relationship with them, they kind of want to know the man that I am and the characters that I have. And I always root that back to my sports days
Nice.
growing up. So
Yeah.
my dad still is a big sports fanatic. He loves sports, and he grew up with nine other brothers and sisters. So he's a
Oh,
family of
wow.
10. His mom was a family of 12. She's part of 12 siblings. So they come from a very big family. So he grew up in the 50s and 60s. So
Mhm.
he had to share a bedroom with a brother, one or two of his brothers his whole life until he moved out to college. And then he finally, got to be on his own. So he always was playing sports. He was always doing things. He was very active in general. And, still today he can't sit still. So when I was growing up, I'm the only boy in the family. I have two older sisters. The
Got it.
oldest one's about 8 years older than me. And so I was always in sports, which I wanted to do because, I'm a kid. I want to play baseball. I want to do soccer. I want to do swimming, football, basketball, all that stuff. So my dad would always push me to do that stuff and was always, practicing with me and stuff. So I that became a big part of my life. And so as I got better in certain sports, and certain sports I didn't excel in, it happened to be swimming was the best sport that I excelled in. So I ended up doing that kind of year round. And as I got better, I had different coaches and was pushed in different ways, and that kind of developed me into a very having structured environment, and then also not having time to do anything else. As you
Yeah.
know, Jamie, you play
Yeah.
lacrosse and stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I was always driven that way. I ended up being in the Indiana state finals my senior year for swimming. And so we had a medley relay team, and I was in an individuals event, 100-yard breaststroke, excuse me. And so that was kind of my biggest achievement. I ended up going to college because of it, getting a scholarship to go to
Nice.
college, and I swam in the junior college national championships for 2 years in a row. Qualified for the U.S. Open in the 200-yard breaststroke, 1999.
Wow.
Didn't go
That's
to the
awesome.
U.S. Open, but I did qualify
Mm.
for it. I kind of reached the pinnacle of where I could. I actually qualified by 1/100th of a second. So it's just like,
Wow.
the length of the thickness of a hair, is
Yeah,
how I would describe it, is how I got that cut.
that's
But
awesome.
I just, with all the training, and those of you that
Yeah,
are athletes, you kind of understand what you have to go through with your body
definitely.
mentally, and then your body physically, obviously have to go through. So that's kind of where my discipline, my
Yeah,
strive, my determination, my never really quit attitude, never give up attitude, it
yeah.
kind of derives from that.
No, I love it. And I mean, I come from a big family myself, and we were all athletes, and I can relate on many levels. I think team sports and individual sports obviously teach slightly different lessons, but I
Yeah,
think there's so much you can draw from sports in general, and just so many life lessons I think are very applicable. My daughter, through her school, she has to pick an after school activity, and tends to be sports. And she's not going to be a professional athlete,
yeah,
most likely, right? But that's okay. I think there's so much you can apply from sports. I love it. And like you alluded to, the discipline, not just, I mean, just the structure of, um, I just think when you're not involved in a sport where you're working toward a goal and training and focused on accomplishing something, um, people tend to drift
yeah,
and not do as well academically or whatever else. And of course, a lot of these lessons you can learn from other, things outside of sports, but I think sports naturally lend themselves to teach these lessons. So, um, okay, so you did the junior college swimming thing, and
yeah.
in a very impressive way, and then what happened?
So I ended up doing another year. Junior college is only for 2 years, for those of you that don't know that. And so I
Yeah.
did another year at our Indianapolis College, IUPUI, studying for computer science and math. And I ended up not graduating on purpose. I
Okay.
actually quit college, and I ended up working for a temp agency that kind of put me in a job opportunity for working for a printing company of all places. So I figured out how to use my computer skills to help that company out, and ended up being their database manager and IT
Okay.
type of manager. And so I just kind of went from there to another mail company slash print company, and then went to another mail slash print company, and kind of built myself up in middle management. So I got a lot of training and skills on how to be a manager, and then also how to be heavily involved in the data mining of those companies.
Now, did you choose it? I mean, why did you choose computer science? Was it you were good at it, or you thought it would be, you could find a high paying job, or a combination?
All the above, really.
Yeah.
At the time, see, I graduated high school in 1997, so I was in college from 98 to 2000, 2001. And
Yeah.
at the time, the dot-com bubble was out there, and
Hmm.
so having an online presence, using computer skills, getting certain programming languages was a big push, because the whole world was starting to really understand that computer science is really the future of what
Yeah.
we need for software and hardware. And so all that stuff interests me, probably more hardware than software. So
Okay.
I actually ended up doing some electrical engineering classes as well. And so all that stuff kind of interests me. I'm a very hands-on type of person. I don't like to read instructions. Surprise, surprise, being a man, right?
Right.
But I
Yeah.
do like to reverse engineer how things work, and I do like to look at a problem and solve it on my own. That challenge is very relaxing
Exciting.
to me, if you
Okay.
can say that.
Sure.
I like that. So like when my mom would buy things for, she had a small beauty salon, so she would buy like certain chairs or certain equipment, and she would ask me to put them together. Like I would just like to put it together. Right? I learned how to work on cars like by myself, just reading magazines and books and stuff, and
Hmm.
all those things just interest me. Being mechanically minded like that. And so
Sure.
that was the computer science part, was obviously a lot less physical work. So it was
Sure.
just using a keyboard and your mind.
Yeah.
So that's really what interests me in computer science.
Makes sense. All right. So, and then why did you quit college? Was it just not going well, or was that more of an intentional decision that you didn't want to go that
Um,
route?
Both. So I didn't do well in school and in college. I didn't get very good grades. I was probably more or less a C, B student in high school. And in college, I did put forth the best effort that I could, with having a full swimming schedule as well. And it was very
Sure.
difficult. Not asking for anybody's pity for that, but it was difficult because
Yeah.
I'd never been pushed in school before. So I found out very quickly that I just wasn't built well to take tests and wasn't built well to be in a classroom environment like that per se.
Hmm. Sure.
So I needed to learn things on my own and be a lot more visual.
Yeah.
So I
Makes sense.
decided that I wanted to get into the workforce and use what I know to start getting a job instead of going through school again. It was just it was like how I describe it, nails on a chalkboard for me to be in
Absolutely.
school. So I don't say that for anyone listening to not go to school. If anybody young
Yeah.
is listening on this podcast, I just say that because it just didn't work for me. It didn't fit me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to push my kids to go to school if they don't want to, as far as college. I
That was
mean,
my next question, actually. I know you have kids, and
yeah.
what's your advice to your kids about college?
So I've talked. My daughters are 9 and 11 right now, and they are. I'm not sure if I told them I didn't finish college or not. I think I might have told the oldest one, but I've already told them that they choose what they want to do as far as what they want to be when they grow up, and it doesn't have to involve college, and it can if you want, but it's not a big push for me, and they know that coming from me and from their mom too.
Hmm. Got it. I think you were just cutting edge. I mean, now it seems like college might be not as necessary. So we'll just say that you were a trendsetter.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Well,
kidding.
I'll just say this, not to digress too much, but specialty seminars are
Hmm.
really like master's degree in your craft.
Hmm.
So what we do, Jamie, if we were to take certain mentorship programs like out of high school or after a few years of college,
Hmm.
it would have benefited us greatly to what we are today. We probably could have fast tracked
Sure.
8 to 10 years of our life just by going through specialty note training or real estate
Yeah,
training right out of
absolutely.
college or right out of high school, as opposed to going to college just to get a general education with a specific minor.
For sure. No, I talked before about how I ended up working for a title company, and I
Yeah,
realized how little I knew about any of that.
yeah.
What's the settlement statement? What is title insurance?
I still
Which
don't
is
understand
actually,
that.
well, yeah, that's a good point. But it's pretty important to understand at least how, these transactions work, but certainly not something I learned in school. But so yeah, let's fast forward a little bit. I mean, obviously we're going to hit on some of the adversity. I know what you've talked about is already, we've been through challenges up to, what we've talked about already, but let's kind of focus on some of the more serious
Yeah.
adversity that you ended up facing.
So what I talk about so far is not real world problem stuff. It's not even a problem in anyone else's eyes. I was pretty fortunate. I have a mom and dad that worked one to two jobs, and they worked all the time, and they provided for us, and we had a nice home. We always had clothes on our backs, and we had food in our bellies. So we're very grateful for that opportunity. They
Hmm.
pushed us in sports, they pushed us in school and stuff. So that part of it, I definitely no adversity there. Just my own uh, trying to get through life, in the
Sure.
normal way. So I ended up getting married probably in my early 30s, I think, to my
Hmm.
to my first wife, and so then we had a kid shortly after that. So obviously, my daughter's 11, so it was
Yeah.
about 12 years ago when I first got married. Fast forward from today, and so that marriage didn't last very long. I think we were married for about 4 or 5 years,
Gotcha.
and it was I thought I married my best friend, and it didn't turn out to be that way. There was a lot of problems with relationships, is not success that I've had,
Mm.
just as an individual in relationships. So um, lo and behold, I find out that there's a lot of drinking involved. She was drinking a lot, and she would end up cheating on me as well
Mhm.
a couple of
Wow.
times. So it was pretty devastating to find that out, because it's just like, you got hit in the face all of a sudden. You're just like, where did this come from? Like, who is
Sure.
this person? Like, yes, you weren't that person yesterday. Like, what's going on? So,
Wow.
we did go through counseling and stuff to try to work through some of our stuff. And that's kind of how all this bled out. So that was
Gotcha.
about a year and a half to 2 years worth of dealing with this person's, the uncertainty of understanding, like, what's going on with you. Are you okay? Why are you doing this? And
Yeah.
it was just things that I just didn't notice when we were together and we got married. And so
Yeah.
that was kind of a huge, that's probably been the biggest adversity I had to come over in my life, was just understanding why that happened.
Sure. No, I
And
appreciate you
yeah,
sharing. It's not always, necessarily how you want to spend your days, talk about your divorce
No,
and all this, but
I've never
um,
openly talked about that over the air. Like those of you that don't know me, I have my own podcast and I have my own live monthly broadcast that I've done for the
yeah,
past 5 or 6 years. And I don't openly talk about my problems or do anything on Facebook like that.
yeah,
Um, but
no,
yeah,
and
it
it's
affected me in a way that I can't describe unless you've gone through it because I just started a business.
you
I
had
had
just
quit my
started a
job.
business. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
So
about a
give us
few
a little
months.
bit,
Yeah.
we don't have to drill down on the stuff you've already mentioned, but give us a little more context as far as,
Yeah.
so you had one child together at that point, or
We actually had
and
both of our kids at that
okay,
point.
okay,
So
got it.
the
Makes
the
sense.
girls were
Yeah, that
I
makes sense.
think they
Okay.
were 4 years old and 2 years old.
Okay.
And so
So you had
then
two girls together, and then and you had just started a business, you said?
yeah, so she had went out on her own first and decided to be kind of a what I call a print broker. So she would work with different clients that would need printing material done, like large magazines and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And so uh, I kind of helped her with that on the side. And so while she was building her business, I was still working a W-2 job. And
Mm-hmm.
then once she had enough money to support that part of the income, I just wanted to be in real estate. And so I saw all these HGTV people at the
Mm-hmm.
time. That's when
Mm-hmm.
Property Brothers and Fix and Flipper were very hot, very
Mm-hmm.
new,
Yeah.
and so I wanted to be just like them, and I thought I could do it. And lo and behold, there was a team that came into town that was promoting Tarek and Christina El Musa at the time,
Okay.
and so I went to that seminar, and then I bought into another seminar, and then led me to another seminar, and paid a bunch of money for that stuff, and then took just got my cut my teeth in real estate, I guess,
Mm.
from there. And then I figured out how to do it. I quit my job and just wanted to focus on that full time. And then just kind of just my back was against the wall, and I just had to figure it out. So I hadn't gotten divorced or had those issues with my wife just yet at that point, but
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of how I started in real estate.
Sure. So, and was as far as your decision, because our listener, may have a W-2, may have a side hustle, may be thinking about
Yeah.
quitting, or, you know, at that time, did you get your wife on board with you quitting your W-2? What was that transition like from W-2 to entrepreneur?
It was pretty easy transition. The company that I worked for was very understanding and very supportive for me to try to go out on my own. They knew I was very driven. I was good at what I do. I didn't leave them high and dry by any means. I stayed on for a couple of months to kind of transition out. So I cut back my hours, each month, and each month I would add hours to my real estate business as I was learning and reading more and getting more training and spending more money and figuring this stuff out on my own. So that transition was kind of nice. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying it was easy. It was just nice because
Mm-hmm.
everybody understood from all facets, from my wife to the company that I worked for. So that was a nice positive reinforcement there.
Got it. Yeah. Sounds a little bit like mine. I took my time and I went part-time for 7 years and was building my real estate, business on the side, and then eventually quit in March of last year. But um, so okay, so then the divorce, and I say this a lot on the show, but it's a kind of the necessary evil as far as the risk we run with the show, or I run, as far as just glossing over
Yeah.
people's pain and adversity. And I know you mentioned that was a year and a half to 2 years of kind of dealing with that, and
Yeah.
that's not none of that was easy. And I know there was a lot that we're glossing over, but um, talk to us about kind of from that, I guess, after that 2 year period was up, or what happened after the kind of that transition took place.
Well, just everything kind of started falling apart. So I took on not a business partner, but kind of a project construction manager partner, if you will, a non-equity partner. And
Okay.
so I would be the expert at financing and finding the deals and just underwriting the project in general with a
Hmm.
direction of where we wanted to go with fix and flipping and wholesaling.
Okay.
And the construction manager was someone that I trusted and was my friend, and they were supposed to manage the project, get the people in, and get the work done. So we worked pretty well together for the most part, but they just didn't have the same drive and tenacity that I did. So there
Hmm.
was a lot of things that were just going a little bit slower paced, and a lot of a few mistakes that were happening, and it was just
Hmm.
constantly like revolving door of contractors coming in and out as far as like they didn't
Hmm.
do it right. We have to redo their work and pay for more stuff. So
What year was this?
this was around 2015, 2016.
Got it. Okay.
So
When you can
uh,
still find deals.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So we could find deals and start working on them. So we do a couple projects at a time, but not too many because these were my first couple of deals, and
Sure.
so that was like right when the bad stuff started happening with finding out about the adultery and the
Mhm.
drinking I knew about for a year or two, and that wasn't the worst part about it. It was the adultery
Yeah, I can't. I
was the
mean, I
worst
can't.
was
I
the
can't
worst part about
imagine.
it.
I mean, it's just yeah. That would just yeah.
Yeah, it's
It's
like someone else living a second life and right in front of you, and you don't even know what's happening. It's just like I don't. At first, you don't believe it. You're just like, how is that possible? Like I'm around you all the time. Like how physically do you have time to do any of this stuff?
sure. Yeah.
Uh,
And then just I imagine it just yeah it rocks you to your core. I mean, it's just um.
yeah,
So what goes through your mind as far as what's going through your mind at that time as you're progressing through
yeah,
that hard couple of years? What's happening internally and with your mindset?
yeah. Well, it's kind of like I would describe it as like the steps to alcoholism, like
Mm,
being an alcoholic and going through Alcoholics Anonymous. I would take it to that extent as far as like at first you're just unaware that this is happening,
hmm.
and then you finally have to come to realization that it happened and there's not anything you can do about it, but you need to accept it, and then you need to start figuring out how to go forward.
Hmm.
But the main thing that I was concerned with was my kids. I'm very
Sure.
close to my kids. I care deeply about my children, and I want to be the best father that I can to them. And I am more concerned at this point. I'm siloing my feelings and putting to the side, which isn't a good thing. But I did that because I wanted my kids to be reassured that daddy's okay, mommy's okay.
Yeah.
It's just we're going to be living in two different houses. That they're very young. They didn't react in a negative way. They just looked at it as, oh, this is cool. I'm getting two Christmases now. I'm getting two birthdays now. They're like, oh yeah,
Sure.
they're spinning the fun out of it. Spinning it to the positive.
Yeah.
Um, but so that was kind of my first priority, is how do I take care of them? Second priority, how do I make sure I get money coming in the door? And
Sure.
my third priority is how do I accept what happened, and how do I move forward from this, and how do I learn from these challenges? So it wasn't easy at all. You have to go through
Hmm.
counseling and figure out what to do. And then, on top of that, mistakes are happening with being a first time entrepreneur, and trying to
Sure.
figure out this real estate game on how to do things and how to trust people and how to vet deals and vet people, and just knowing how to run a business. It was Jamie, I made all the mistakes in the world, and I
Yeah.
lost a crap ton of money too. I lost $60,000 on one flip.
Wow. That is a lot. I mean, it's a lot when I mean, for anyone, right? But especially when you're going through a
Yeah.
divorce and I mean,
My
um,
mind probably wasn't right at the time. I thought I was sharp and I knew what I was doing, but before I knew it, people were making mistakes. We were to market too early. I was, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I can look back now and point fingers, but at the end of the day,
sure.
the person that is the problem is the person that's talking on the microphone right now.
No, I appreciate you being vulnerable and honest. And that's what I'm trying to get at with this show is it's easy to think that it's all rainbows and unicorns. And Justin Bogard's this entrepreneur who's just got it made and was handed
Yeah.
everything. And
No.
it's not like that. And um, no, I appreciate you sharing. But so what if looking back on, and I know we haven't finished the rest of the story yet, but just
Yeah.
kind of
there's
up to
there's
that
more.
point. Yeah, there's more.
There's
But
more.
up to that
Hold on.
point with both the family hardships and the business and technically not partnership, but business hardships or relationships there. What have you learned at this point? Looking back, what did you learn up at that till that point? Any lessons you could pull out?
Yeah, there's a lot of lessons. At first, as far as a relationship goes, I need to be more open with my feelings. I did need to wear my heart on my sleeve a little bit more, so at least the other person knows where I'm at. The other
Hmm.
person knows my values and how I feel and what I think.
Sure.
And then also I need to make sure that they reciprocate that as well, and make sure the communication is a two-way street and not very closed off. And I think that was a big major problem with my first marriage,
Hmm.
was that the communication just wasn't open. It was always assumed that the other party was happy because I
Hmm.
didn't know otherwise, but we didn't also talk about it either. So
Hmm.
there isn't blame, 100% blame on her side. You know, there's blame on my side as well. And
Hmm.
so that's what I learned from my first marriage is the communication really is the open door. And like what you said, Jamie, no matter what you see on people's Facebook posts, all this happy,
Yeah.
rainbows and sunshine stuff, it isn't reality at all.
Right.
It's a facade of what's really going on. Not saying every happy person on Facebook is actually depressed and sad and everything's horrible on their side. It's just
Right. Right.
they're not showing you the full gambit of the picture of the story.
Right.
You're just seeing the highlight reel, right?
Yeah. And the truth is, and I, I've talked about this with my wife. It's like, people only put their vacation pictures. Yeah. But I kind of like seeing their vacation pictures. Like
Well, I do
I,
that too. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I don't want to necessarily always dive into people's problems all day. I'm going on social media to have a nice positive break. So we're not saying it's necessarily a bad thing that people are doing that,
Yeah.
but just understand that what they're posting is it can get, if you take that as 24/7, this is what their life is always like. That's just not the truth.
Yeah.
Um,
E-
yeah, go ahead.
Everybody has their own struggles. Everybody has their own life problems, and it all sucks. But there's also a positive
Yeah.
to it. There's also highs and there's also lows, and we all go through it. And I expect that to happen in the future.
Yeah.
And by all means, I feel like I've had, in my experience and walking a mile in my shoes, I've had some hard times,
Hmm.
but they're not probably anything like somebody else's hard times to where maybe they've lost a loved one or something very, very traumatic has happened to them. I don't
Yeah.
want to compare myself to a situation like that, but I have
Sure.
gone through hard times, and I
Yeah.
know that it's made me stronger, and I had to learn from those hard times in order to get back, to the positive direction. So
Yeah. So, and on the small business side or the real estate investing side, what was anything was communication also the lesson there, or what was a lesson you could take from that?
it's really it's the real estate, knowing how to flip a house or knowing how to wholesale, it's not that complicated. Knowing
Hmm.
how to buy a note or invest in a note, it's not that complicated. It isn't rocket
Hmm.
science,
Yeah.
but that's one small part of it.
Hmm.
So when you're on your own, you either do this as a part-time thing or you do this as a full-time thing. I chose to do it as a full-time thing. I had only my own money to back me, and I
Hmm.
didn't ask for any help or any money from my family, and I don't know if they would have gave it to me, but I didn't ask for it because I didn't want that. That's not the type of person I am. I don't want a handout. I want to learn the
Hmm.
hard way because I'm hard-headed. So I did that on my own. So when I lost all that money, I was negative. My worth was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars negative.
Wow.
So it was
And
devastating.
so, and just to with the family side of things, when you were $100,000 to $200,000 negative, whatever it was exactly, but when you had no money, what was going on was that as you were going through the divorce, or what was the timing of everything? How did that line up with the family side of things?
Yeah, so when I found out about, the adultery stuff, I knew the relationship was over, and that at least that was a known fact going forward,
Mm.
and that
Hmm.
just going through the divorce, separating the assets and all that stuff was actually easy to do
Mm.
because there was no disagreement from either side on stuff. We didn't make it, well, I should say I didn't make it, difficult for the other person, for my
Hmm.
ex.
Sure.
I just said, "What's the point?
Yeah.
What's the point?" I could
Right.
dislike them. I could say I loathe them. I could say I hate them. I could try
Hmm.
to spite them. I could try to put things back in their face and be, passive aggressive. But at the end of the day, who cares?
Yeah.
Who
That's good.
really cares? What good is that going to do me by being vindictive? And so that's just not the person that I am. So I just move on. I just be the best co-parent that I can with them.
Sure.
To this day, we still communicate pretty well, and there's no like friction or problem between us. I just kind of said what I said, while
Hmm.
we were getting divorced, and it just
Yeah.
is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it to change the past.
So then the business hardships, timing wise, how did that coincide with the
It kind
divorce
of, it was the perfect
was.
storm. It all
Gotcha.
happened kind of at the same time. And there's a saying that you hear, when it rains, it pours. And
Hmm.
I relate to that in a lot of times in my life. I know when
Hmm.
something bad happens and a couple other things bad happen, like the rest of it's going to come down. So just expect it to come down. So it doesn't seem
Yeah.
that bad, right? You know what's going to happen.
Sure.
If you know someone's
Yeah.
going to rip off the band-aid, at least you know, as opposed to being surprised about it.
Yeah.
Take it a
I
little
don't
bit
know
better.
if I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to our mutual friend Chris Seveni's episode on my show. It was episode 3, so we're going back about a year, but
Yeah.
he went through. There was a 2 or 3 month period where it was a divorce and about $250,000 in debt, if I recall correctly, and then he also had a major health scare.
Yeah.
And so again, you get into this comparison game, and that's not the point.
Yeah.
It's just in a lot of ways, you know, he went through a similar type story where just like you said, when it rains, it pours, and he ended up moving geographically and kind of restarting. So
Yeah.
how did you refocus? How did you rebuild at that point?
What's kind of the same way you described Chris's story. That's kind of how I think. I just, like a computer, I just want to reboot. I want
Yeah,
to push a button, just said reset. Okay,
sure.
wipe the memory clean. You don't, nothing happened in the past. I'm like a goldfish, right? Got 10-second memory, Ted Lasso, right?
Right.
10-second memory,
Nice.
and just reset and move forward. You can express your emotions and express your feelings, is what I've learned, and it's okay to do that, and you should do that. But at the same time, you just need to acknowledge your feelings and you need to move forward. And so I lost a bunch of money, you know, whoop de doo, poor Justin, right? But how do you get it back? How do you move forward? How do you not make that mistake again? Are you going to just give up because you lost a bunch of money? Has anyone
Hmm.
else done that? Well, yeah, lots of people have lost money before. Lots of people
Sure.
made mistakes. And I know that I don't want to go back to a W-2 job. I just consider that jail for me. I don't want to go to jail.
Yeah,
I
love
don't
it.
want to do it. There's been
Sure.
many times, and I've lost money again on deals, not too far from the timeline where we're at right now, and
Hmm.
where I lost it all again. Right,
Hmm.
I get it back, and I lost it all again. Um, you just, I refuse to give up this life of being an entrepreneur and being a business
Hmm.
owner, and I won't back down no matter how many times I get knocked down.
I love it. That's great. So just looking back on the times you've lost money as in specific deals, and I think you would agree it's almost unavoidable if you do enough deals. And you know,
Yeah.
you can't approach business or investing with the from the standpoint of there's no risk or anything like that. There's always risk. But what would you do differently from maybe an individual deal standpoint, or how have you adjusted your business model, you know, going forward to avoid a big loss like that?
Well, I feel really comfortable now when I look at a deal and I underwrite it, because I know the expenses in my head now that I've experienced going through a deal forwards and backwards and doing it many times.
Hmm.
So I understand what it costs to go into it. I understand what can go wrong, and I know what's going to happen. I hate not knowing what you don't know.
Hmm.
And so, because now I know what's going to happen, anything minor that pops up really isn't a big deal. I know it's not a
Hmm.
major thing. So
Sure.
going forward, I definitely have a lot of experience, and then I also have people that I can lean on very heavily. I have you, have
Yeah.
Chris, I have Richard, I have my mentors that got me into the note business.
Yeah.
I have all those people I can lean on when I have those challenges. So I would, until this point. I don't have to lean on people too often anymore, unless I come across a really unique situation that I just don't know.
Hmm.
Uh, but I have that
Sure.
luxury today of passing on that knowledge now to the next person. And so that's
I love it.
a lot of what we do today is more, not training per se, but more just
Hmm.
educational. Just say, hey, learn from our experiences, and
Sure.
we can tell you when you're doing this type of deal. I pretty much know what's going to happen with this deal. I can know
Hmm.
what this
Yeah.
borrower is thinking. I know they're lying.
Right.
I know what's going on with
Yeah.
that deal.
Yeah, that's good. It's yeah, and you get sometimes these because there's so many coaches and trainers out there now. Sometimes those of us who do this in any capacity, because I do mentorship, you know, on a one-on-one basis as well, and it's some of us get a bad rap because you know these because there are some shady coaches
There's
out
some
there.
bad actors out there, that's for sure.
For sure. And, people who just should not be advising others, for sure. But you reach a point where it's like, well, why would you not, if you have all this experience, why would you not give back? Why, there's value in that for other people. So they should be paying you for that. If,
Yeah.
that's a good thing. But question on the, so you mentioned your business partner, Richard. How did you get comfortable enough to partnering with Richard, and what do you look for when you're working with people professionally at this point?
Yes. So again, it's like losing money on a deal and then trying to pick up the pieces and move forward. It's the same thing with a business partner or someone that you want to work with on a team.
Hmm.
You're going to go through people. You're going to go through employees. It's just until you find the right assistant, virtual assistant or helper,
Hmm.
you're not going to find the right one until you do. And so
Sure.
you may go through several, and just like vendors, you're going to go through several vendors or contractors until you find the right one that works for you. So it's sniffing out what is it that I'm looking for, and then how
Yeah.
does that person replicate that, or how do they complement what I do well? So
Sure.
I know what I do well. I know what Richard Thornton does well,
Yeah.
and so together we have a business marriage uh,
Yeah.
very well, because there are things that he does that I just don't want to do and I don't do well to begin with. There's
Hmm.
things that I do really well that he just throws up his hand and says, that's not me. I don't
Right.
want to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
No, and like I said, I've gotten to know you guys a little bit better, and it seems like you work very well together. So before I jump, I do have some more rapid fire questions, but before I
Okay.
get to those, what's talk about your business today. What does that look like? You have a fund. What does that mean? What's your business look like today?
Yeah. So today, we're doing the same thing that we're doing the past 6 or 7 years, which is just buying seller finance paper. We find the people that create seller financing or do owner financing on their properties, and then we buy that paper from them. And so with the fund now, we have a bigger bank that we can work from instead of using our own capital, because
Hmm.
Richard and I decided, hey, let's use our own money. And then we realized after 10, 14 deals, we don't have any
Hmm.
more money. So how
Yeah.
do we get more money there? Well, we should be doing a fund. We didn't know we were going to have this much opportunity to buy stuff. We didn't know we were going to do this well this quickly. And
Yeah.
so we just said, stop. We need a solution quickly. And we said, let's start a fund. So we said, we're going to do a $10 million fund. We're going to do a
Nice.
family and friends fund.
Yeah.
That's what we call it, 506B,
Hmm.
fully regulated, and had an attorney draft all the paperwork. And
Sure.
so we have investors now that are investing in our fund, where it's going to be a
Yeah.
10-year fund, and we only have we're planning on, after the first couple of years, to do the next iteration of that fund and to make it larger and more robust. And
Hmm.
so that's kind of our game plan. Our stepping stone is to get to 3 funds. And so the
Okay.
first one is already in place, in motion, and already active. And the second one, about 2 years from now, we'll probably introduce the second.
Nice. Well, I mean, a couple things that I'll add on. One is you have the real estate background from, you know, fix and flipping and wholesaling and construction. And I mean, that only helps because we do see, as you can be successful as a note investor coming from the engineering side of things, or coming from
Yeah.
finance or the mortgage side of things, or coming from the real estate or real estate investing niche. It's kind of there's not a one size fits all avatar of who's going to be successful as a mortgage note investor. But personally, I think if I had to give any, I mean, I think just having that real estate background is huge, because what happens if your borrower goes non-perform, your note goes non-performing, they stop paying? Well, you can evaluate that property, what to do with it, and you have that experience. So I think that only helps. Secondly, I think it just makes sense as far as the fund. I mean, this business comes down to three things. It's it's finding deals, which it sounds like you and Richard have a pretty good niche as far as finding
Yeah.
access to notes themselves, seller finance paper. And the other piece is managing those assets, which I know you do a good job of, because we have used the same platform, and you and
Yeah.
I have talked about that. And then thirdly, like you said, it doesn't matter if you and Richard have $10 million between the two of you, you're going to run out of your own capital if you're scaling. I mean, it doesn't really matter. So you've got to find access to capital. So it sounds like you've found a way to solve all three of those problems. I know it's always a work in progress.
Yeah, I wouldn't say solve the problem, but I'd say we
Address,
definitely,
work on.
yeah, we're definitely trending in the right direction. That, OPM, the
There
other
you go.
people's money, is a key
Yeah,
to anybody's real estate business.
absolutely. No, that makes sense. So, and then you have an educational side, and I know you have. We'll talk in
Yeah,
a little bit about how people can reach out to you. But I've got a few rapid fire questions here
go
for you.
ahead. Yeah.
What's one thing that people misunderstand about you?
Wow, that's a good one. I I think it's my discipline and my tenacity. They don't
Okay.
they don't. I think that's part of it. The other thing I think people, and I don't know this. This is just my assumption, just my
Mm-hmm.
view on how other people might view me, or not take
Mm-hmm.
advantage of what I know and my experience,
Mm-hmm.
is that I don't feel like a lot of people listen to my advice.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that they would at least consider it, or at least seriously think about the fact that I've been through that before, or I can sense what's going on with this, or you should do things this way.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of bothers me a little bit, but I'm just, I
Sure.
understand from their point of view that, who am I? They don't know me yet, right? They don't know my story or my background. Maybe after this episode they
Yeah,
will.
there you
I don't know.
go. We're gonna fix that problem right here,
Right.
right now.
But but I say,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the biggest thing I noticed, is that I don't think people follow my advice very well. I feel like I give really good advice, Jamie, and I don't charge for it either.
Maybe that's the problem. You got to
Maybe
charge
that is
for
a
it.
problem.
No, that's good. I mean, I can, I can relate on some level, but, um, a lot of times it's just timing and how the message is structured, but it's, you can't force it. Um, what's one of your biggest, regrets or failures that we haven't talked about? Anything that you can point to that you'd like a do-over with?
Man, there's a lot of things I'd like to do over with. But at the same time, I'll talk out the other side of my mouth and say I wouldn't be here and know
Yeah,
what I know today if I didn't go through what I went through.
sure.
Going through the divorce, losing a lot of money, not knowing if I'm going to be able to afford to buy my kids food.
Mhm.
It's just, there was times in my life to where it's just like, my God, like, is it really this bleak? And then I would read about, other entrepreneurs and other CEOs. It's like they all go through it. They all have lost money. They've all gone through terrible stuff,
Mhm.
very stressful things. Like, if you can't stomach this stuff, don't be an
Yeah.
entrepreneur.
No, absolutely.
I didn't know the stuff either. I wish I would have had better mentorship or known who to trust early
Mhm.
on. And I think I would have had a lot less struggles. I still would have struggled. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
This wouldn't have been. There is no perfect road. There is no perfect way to hold somebody's hand. It's just, it's too difficult to teach being a business owner in a class. You just have to get your hands dirty and just hope
Absolutely.
and pray.
Yeah, there's some principles you can, fall back on, but your business looks different than my business, so we
Oh
might have
yeah,
different struggles, and
yeah.
um, so speaking of that though, if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self some advice, what would it be?
I would say understand money, understand financing very quickly.
Yeah, I love that. It's really good. Yeah, that's a tough one too, because it's we say we should educate, and I fully agree. It's critical, right, to educate the younger generation on personal finance and investing. Getting their buy-in is the hard part sometimes, but um, I'll just leave that there. If you could go back
Yeah.
and have a coffee or a drink, or have a conversation with any historical figure, who would you choose?
Any historical figure? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
they could still be alive today. Is just anybody you'd like to pick their brain for half an hour?
Man, I mean, nothing jumps out on paper, but I would probably pick somebody that has just been through just a lot of life challenges, and just understand where their mind was, where they were going through, how they move forward. I don't
Sure.
like I said, I can't picture who that would be off the top of my head, but it would be
Yeah.
someone, and it may not be somebody famous. It just may be
Sure.
somebody close to me that I know, that I would look up to and be like, I want to be like that person.
Absolutely. Um, if you were given $10 million tomorrow, what would you do with it?
Invest in a fund. Um, I would definitely not spend it. I would probably pay off some debt that's been bothering me. And then I would probably make sure that I set up a very strong portfolio that would just keep constant cash flow coming in
Nice.
and build off that. I always try to live beneath my means, or just right at my means,
Sure.
and not overspend. So I don't have fancy stuff, because I just want to set up for the future. I'm used to not having fancy things, so I don't want
Mhm.
to start having it and be spoiled.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, how about a book that you could recommend, a book or two that's either in about life or entrepreneurship or investing, any of those topics? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, there's a few books that I've read. The titles are escaping me, and obviously, Rich Dad Poor Dad is probably the number one book that you just have to read when you get into
Sure.
real estate. Just it does a great job of setting the table, of understanding why 9 out of 10 millionaires are in real estate, to understanding
Hmm.
financials, understanding about hard assets, and understanding leveraging. Like all those techniques are a great precursor to what you can be. But I also read a lot of just sometimes I read just odd books that have nothing to do with life, nothing to do with bettering yourself as far as being a business person.
Sure.
So I sometimes I read some occult or esoteric type of books just for the story of it, or just understanding that this might have happened in our past, and that kind
Yeah.
of I guess I'll say excites, but I guess it 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 answers a lot of questions for me about, how did we get fast forward to 2023 from,
Hmm.
year zero when Christ was born. Like
Hmm.
how do we get to here, and how are things moving slow? And then all of a sudden there was a explosion of, industrialism and stuff. So it's just that stuff fascinates me just to understand.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it sounds like you have that analytical mind and you like to deconstruct things and just kind of
Yeah.
understand things from that standpoint. Um, so what's one thing in your business a problem that you're dealing with right now on the business side?
The biggest problem that we have, I think, is it's very similar to any business today, and that's knowing how to market.
Hmm.
So knowing how to market, meaning we have to, like you said, we have to raise capital. So we're
Yeah,
looking for individuals with private money. Number
sure.
two, we have to find inventory. So that's two of our legs of our three-leg stance here.
Yeah, yeah,
And so marketing to those two different verticals is
yeah.
always a challenge, because it's an ever moving target, and it isn't the old ways before a lot of social media and technology, where you just send out mail or put things in the newspaper because everyone is reading those things. Well, now everyone's reading a multitude of different type of sources,
Hmm.
and it's how do you spend your money and where do you spend your money. So it's very difficult to figure out, like you said in the beginning, your avatar of
Yeah,
who your customer is or who your client is, and understanding them and how to reach them in a way that makes sense, so that they are, enticed, or at least this is what they want to do. And I just happen to be in front of them when they want to make that decision.
sure. No, I can totally understand. The passive investor is very different than the active node investor, real estate investor, and how do you focus your marketing and business development efforts to kind of
Yeah.
provide the most value to the person you're trying to reach.
Well,
Uh,
there's sales, there's marketing, and they're
yeah,
not the same
yeah,
thing.
they're
They are
they're not the
not the
same.
same thing.
Yeah, this is true. I've just started trying to implement some KPIs. Just starting this in my business, because we did all
Yeah.
this marketing, and it's like, what for?
Yeah.
Posting on
What's
social
working?
media, that's cool. Like, it doesn't really mean
Yeah.
anything unless it's really coming back to the business. But
Yeah.
um, so um, what's one question that I haven't asked you that you wish I had?
um,
Anything
I,
you want to talk about that we haven't touched on? Talk about your podcast and
yeah.
and where people can find you.
So we have a podcast called Be the Bank. We are on season 5, and we're through probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 episodes already on season 5. We release it every other Wednesday, so we do about 26 episodes a year. So every year is a season. That's how I'm keeping track.
Hmm.
So it's easy to keep track. I've been doing this for 5 years. I started off with my good friend here locally in the Indianapolis area. Her name is Elizabeth Mayora, or she likes to be called Super E. And so we had the Super E and J podcast, and that was kind of the pilot season, the first season. And then we changed the iteration to the Two Wealth Show, because we were just talking about wealth and And
And she
real
was more
estate,
into, she's into short-term rentals. Is that right?
she's
Okay.
our short-term rental expert
Yep.
in our region, really.
Hmm.
There's not a lot of people that do it, so she kind of flourished pretty quickly. And
Hmm.
she's really smart, really well. She worked in the car industry up in Michigan for a while in corporate. And so then she decided that she just really doesn't have a lot of time for it. Things are going well for her. She's running other businesses and buying other businesses.
Hmm.
And so then I just took the lead and said, you know what, don't worry about it. I got this. And then I started the Be the Bank podcast. So
Hmm.
now I've done 2 seasons of this new iteration of it.
Yeah.
And so we focus on just talking about, it's almost like back to sports now. The
Yeah.
ESPN analyst the next day talking about the game last night. It's just Richard. Usually Richard and I or me and a guest bringing up
Yep.
maybe a specific topic or just analyzing something and just having debate and discussion about it and just
Sure.
being open about it. It's very quick. It's 20 to 30 minutes, so it's a car ride. That's what that
Yeah.
podcast does. So it's called Be the Bank. You can subscribe to it on any podcast directory. And then we do a live monthly educational broadcast that we do on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page, and that's American Note Buyers YouTube channel. And that
Nice.
is basically informational, more visual, just showing about maybe stats going on in the industry. We'll usually show a case study or give an example of things that we've done. So it helps people kind of understand real estate so they can choose to do it on their own, but most likely they end up being more passive and want to invest in like a fund. So
Sure. Makes a lot of sense. Where do you see things going on the seller financing side of things?
it's been trending. So let's start back to the crisis of
Hmm.
2009,
Hmm.
the debacle, the real estate
Sure.
debacle, I'll call it. The recession, whatever, the Great Recession, I think is what they called it. They labeled it as the
Yeah.
states did. Um, so mortgages immediately got underwater because prices of home values just dipped very quickly,
Hmm.
pretty much overnight. So banks foreclosed like crazy. In
Hmm.
around 2012, 2011, 2013, there was just a floodgate of foreclosures coming through, and
Hmm.
you could you could have all the money in the world and spend as much as you can at the sheriff's sale, and there'd still be leftover inventory. It
Hmm.
was that much inventory that came to fruition. So a lot of these hedge funds would gobble them up. They would buy them, they would resell them on seller financing and do nothing to them. And borrowers would put down payments and they would sell them on land contract or contract for
Hmm.
deeds or sometimes note mortgages.
Hmm.
So that paper kind of baked 2014, 2015, 2016. They started selling off that paper a little bit at a time. So we had a lot of paper like that came through. At that time, real estate was just rising in appreciation. Around 2018, it kind of
Hmm.
stayed off,
Sure.
and then so that's when kind of things got flat and it was harder to do. Noticing starting to do harder to do flips and stuff until we got
Hmm.
2020, and then really since the credit crunch was happening in 19, 20, 21, it's been harder for people to get bank financing. So now
Sure.
seller financing becomes strong. Appreciation is still rising, like
Yeah.
crazy. So seller financing is going to continue to get stronger for the next couple of
Hmm.
years. Um, so
I would
if you
think
don't know
so
this
too.
already, Jamie, it's about 30 to 35,000 seller finance transactions get recorded every year.
Wow.
Residential,
Hmm.
commercial, land, all that stuff. Bulk of them come from Texas.
Okay. Yeah. No, I agree that it's only going to continue to trend in the upward direction as far as opportunity in the seller financing space. It's, and of course we record this, today. Who knows what it's going to be like in 6 months, right? We don't have a crystal ball, but the fact is, like you said, residential real estate can, even though there are other offices, commercial is different. Multifamily might start to see some real, looking like we're seeing some cracks in that space. But when you're talking residential real estate in the, say, 75,000 to $250,000 range, the prices are only continuing to climb. And because why would people,
Yeah.
transactions are down, but so that collateral value is only continuing
Yeah.
to rise. And like you said, and with the credit crunch, underwriting standards have only gone up and up and up. So it's hard to get it's hard to get a loan from a bank. right?
Well, why
So
why would they lend on a property that's 150,000 and less? It does
sure.
them no good because it costs
Yeah.
them the same to underwrite that as it does $1 million home.
Hmm.
So why would they want to? It only
Yeah.
benefits us as entrepreneurs and real estate investors to do seller financing, to help that market void right there, as our friend Eddie would say.
Absolutely. So, no, that's great. It seems like you've got some strong opportunity there in the space that you find yourself in.
Yeah,
Um,
residential is going to be good. I think 2024 in the spring is going to be a great year to start investing in real property again. I think you'll
mm,
start to seeing more motivated sellers at that point, and so I think the inventory will start to balance back out again. I think commercial is going to be a great opportunity for non-performing note investors.
mhm,
It's only going to get more bleak for the commercial banks and commercial lending right now because they're
yeah,
holding paper that's just losing its value every day. And so you're probably going to be able to pick up some pretty good deals pretty soon if you invest in commercial. It's a lot more
yeah,
capital intensive, but
sure.
but you can pick up some good deals, which is great while we have the fund as well, and you do too.
Absolutely. There's always opportunity behind every problem, right? Even though the
There is,
headlines will scare you.
yeah,
Um, that's that's the life of an entrepreneur and an investor, is finding that opportunity and then adding value to those
yeah,
distressed assets and adding value to your investors and the people you work with. So,
yeah.
what else do you want to add, Justin, before we wrap up?
Um, Really, I appreciate being on. This is the first time I shared a lot of those things on open air, so hopefully, my experiences will give somebody inspiration to say, there's somebody has gone through something. Like I said, some of my stuff is not traumatic or tragic by any means from somebody else's experiences or what they've gone through. But I think the moral of my story can relate to a lot of people. Is if you want to do this, just commit to it, just like a marriage, and just be in it for the long haul. And there's
Hmm.
going to be ups, there's going to be a lot of downs, and all you have to do is learn from the downs and be prepared for 'em when they happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very practical episode. Unfortunately, a lot of people can relate to relationship struggles and
Yeah.
you know, adultery and divorce and things like that. Um, and I just love the fact that you were vulnerable and that you recognize, even though a lot of what you went through you actually couldn't control, you're still owning up to, there are lessons there for what you could have done better as far as the communication. You talked about that.
Yeah.
And so just I think for the listener out there, understanding that life sucks sometimes and that's okay, and you can get through it and better days are ahead. um and Justin, you've had struggles on the personal side of things as well as on the business side of things, but you're still here, and your lessons from your sports and your swimming, your discipline and your tenacity that came out of that is only going to come back and reward you and reward Richard and the investors who work with you. So I do thank you for coming on. And any last tidbit you want to share?
Yeah, I would say, as you were um, regurgitating this episode here and spelling it out in a fast sense, I was thinking, one of the best things that I learned from counseling is that when you get stuck on something or you just shake your head and you don't understand why, you write down on a piece of paper, what are the things I can control
Mm,
and what are the things I can't control.
mm-hmm,
And one of the things I can't control is somebody else, right?
mm-hmm.
I can control my feelings, I can control how I react to a situation, but I can't control what somebody else does. And
Sure.
so a lot of the things that I do in life, I sit back and I just understand, like, if I'm trying to get a certain reaction out of somebody, or a certain thing to happen, I need to make sure that I'm communicating to them how they want to be communicated. So one of my biggest pet peeves is people not reading emails. So I
Yeah.
understand when you send a lengthy email, not everybody is going to read it in its entirety. So you
Yeah.
have to make it very brief, very quick, and very easy to follow. Color coordinate it, bullet point it, and just say, "I need these 3 questions answered," and then you know
Yeah.
your life's a lot easier. So I can't control how if somebody reads my emails,
Right.
but what I can control is just getting the point out quickly.
Yeah. How you present that email to them. You and I have several of the same pet peeves.
Yeah.
Why won't this person listen to me? Why won't they read my email?
I mean, I told you to use the blue pen on the white paper.
Right.
I don't know
Hello.
how else to explain it.
But that's good. No, it's very true though. In all seriousness, you can't control what other people,
No,
anything
you
they do
can't.
really.
So why get upset about it, Jamie?
Yeah,
Why
absolutely.
get upset about it?
Yep. I love it. Well, Justin Bogard, this has been very good. I really appreciate your time. I think you
Welcome.
said you said something about you're about to go swing some golf clubs. Is that right?
Yeah. It's a nice day today. I'm going to hit the range real quick. And then
Awesome.
my youngest daughter has a math bowl contest at our local middle school in a few hours. So
Love it.
that's my plans today. And that's what I look forward to, is just getting to enjoy those things, because I have those freedoms now.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you mentioned your podcast and your monthly webinar show. What is there anything else you want to put out there as far as how the listener can get a hold of you?
Sure. I appreciate that opportunity to plug in. So once again, we're with American Note Buyers. We have a website called anbfunds.com. We have a podcast that's called Be the Bank. You can subscribe to any podcast directory. We have a YouTube channel for American Note Buyers. You can look us up and see tons of videos. And so those are the three things that we have out there. So if you want to communicate with us, go to our website, anbfunds.com. And we have a contest us page, and you can just kind of look at some of our content there. But if you want to get some free stuff out of it, listen to our podcast, download it, and then also watch some of our YouTube videos. We have a ton of content out there, just, like I'm sure you and Chris do as well.
Yeah, no, and like I said, for the listener out there, I've gotten to know Justin and Richard better over the last year or two, and I highly recommend you check out their content. They know what they're doing, and they put out a lot of good stuff. So thanks again, Justin. And to the listener, thank you for spending your most valuable resource with us, and that is your time. Thanks, everyone. Take care.